Welcome back to Day 2 of the 2021 Texas Workforce Commission Virtual Forum. Enjoy your session, and remember, complete the survey for each session that you attend. These surveys will be sent to you via email at the end of each session.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the last session for the Workforce Forum. And my name is Melody Archer, and I am one of the moderators here today. We also have Valerie Vitareda, and she is working behind the scenes and answering questions in the Q&A, which you will find over in the far right-hand corner of your screen. So this session is Cultivating Apprenticeship Programs in the Valley, and it is moderated by Dr. Carlos Margo, and we have the ability for you to, as I said, post questions in the Q&A window down in the bottom right, and we also have do we have closed captioning available? I just realized I don't see the screen. Andrew, do we have closed captions in this session?
Yes, we do. If you can't see those closed captions, go ahead and click on the 3 dots in the bottom right of your screen, and there should be an option for multimedia viewer, and that's where the captions will be.
Okay, great. So if you all caught that, the 3 dots next to chat and participants, if you click on that, you'll have an option for multimedia viewer, and it may have you click a blue button to open that up, and that's where the closed captions will show up for the session today. You can change the font size in that as well. You'll notice some little a toolbar at the bottom to change those things. So we are going to be having a Q&A segment at the conclusion, but the panel will also be taking questions throughout the presentation. So if you have a question, you can raise your hand. And the way that you do that is by clicking on the participant window at the bottom of the right-hand side, and it'll open up, and you will see a little icon that looks kind of like a hand, but if you hover over it, it says raise hand. So if you do that, you have a question you would like to speak out loud, we'll call on you. Otherwise, you're free to type in the Q&A. So this is being recorded, just so you know, and the recordings and information are going to be available in about 7 days on the TWC intranet. And so now we invite you to sit back and enjoy. If you have technical difficulties, please put something in the Q&A to Valerie or to the WebEx producer or me, and we will help you out. So here is Dr. Carlos Margo. He's the Associate Dean at the Office of Industry Training and Economic Development at South Texas College.
Thank you, Melody, and good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for joining this breakout session. It's an hour, and the way I've structured this is to go over some of the programs within the apprenticeship training area that we have, in addition to other workforce programs. But I also have 3 additional partners of the college and of our apprenticeship programs who will also share their experiences with the apprentice program, and explain why they decided to join a workforce training program, and specifically why an apprenticeship program. And and as we go along, I will allow some time for questions should you have something during our presentation. But as was mentioned, at the end we will have about 5 to 6 minutes for questions. And as well, if you need to ask a question via the chat, I will be notified of these questions throughout my presentation, and I'll be glad to answer those questions as we move along. So yes, I serve as the Associate Dean at South Texas College in McAllen. We service a 2-county district. We've been in business since 1993. We're student population on the academic side, we're about 27,000. And on a workforce training side, which includes continuing education, our non-credit, we're about 12 to 14,000 students per year, any given year. So we've got quite a large workforce training and continuing education program, and that includes hundreds of different programs in the workforce. And one of the newer programs is what we're going to talk about today is the registered apprenticeship, and that is registered through the Department of Labor. It includes several different programs that I'll share with you right now, and a few of our participating businesses. But as we move along, before we move along, I want to introduce our panelists, because these are very important, critical partners that we have, because one of the underpinning themes that I will have for this session is that of partnerships. A college or any apprenticeship sponsor, for that matter, cannot implement any apprenticeship in any occupation or industry without strong partners. And that's one message that I want to make sure is very clear in this session is you have to have strong partnerships. And one program that we're actually in the middle or just in the infancy of implementing it is the construction supervision. And what I want to do, because Joey Trevino is going to be participating in another event right now, I would like to give him the floor before he has to do that and talk about what his experience is with this program. Now, Joey Trevino is the Executive Director for the Rio Grande Valley chapter of the Associated General Contractors of America. And through his organization, we were able to create and now implement the construction superintendent program, which has been one of the more popular, one of the most in-demand programs, and one of the programs that actually filled up, from day one. So if Joey can provide a little bit of an overview. I don't know if you're able to now provide that presentation, Joey, but if you can, please provide an overview of what your involvement is as the General Contractors of America, what your role is, and what you anticipate happening in the future of apprenticeship training.
Thank you, Dr. Margo. Thank you for having us.
Joey, your audio's a little quiet.
It's a little quiet. This is as good as I get.
All right, that's better now.
Is it better? Okay, sorry. I'll try to speak as loud as I can. Just in a nutshell, Carlos pretty much put it together for us, but we came up with the idea. Celso Gonzales Construction. It came to me and said, "Hey, we have an issue with jobs. We don't have enough." And said, experience are always taken to construction companies, private construction companies. So,
Joey, we're losing your.
Hello.
Oh, we weren't able to hear the last thing you said. Your audio's coming in and out.
Okay. Again, we put our brains together to see if we could develop a program that is kind of real-world, real-time job superintendent responsibilities. We both knew Dr. Margo well. We brought it to his attention, and then he brought the right people from the college together to hear issues and develop a program. One of the issues, of course, again, there were different levels of experience out in the field with job superintendents. Some had 10, 15 years experience, and some had months of experience. So I think we came to the table to develop a curriculum that was real world in the commercial side of construction that would help our job superintendents be successful, right out of the box. They have some experience maybe as a foreman or as a project planner in the office. I think these first couple of weeks that we've had the program going, we've had about 30 students that are taking these courses twice a week, one in person, online, and in person. And then once a month we come out to a job site and go over what particular study curriculum. It's been real successful, I think, and I think we've been approved for another cohort in the summer. And I've just announced it to our group. Our chapter is very excited, and the good thing about it is get a credential from the Department of Labor as a journeyman job superintendent. So I think that's really exciting, and it's going to be get the second hope.
Joey, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's going in and out. But let me summarize. I pretty much caught what you said in nuggets. So if I could, let me take it from here. And if you hear it, you feel free to chime in if there's anything you want to add. But from what I understand, Joey was saying is that his organization approached South Texas College, and his organization represents many commercial builders in the Rio Grande Valley. His membership is quite large, and that's the way that this apprenticeship program started. But Joey was very instrumental in getting together with South Texas College, having us listen to what his needs are, and I'm talking about the collective needs of that industry. And this organization, the RGV chapter of the Associated General Contractors, was the ideal platform to develop this particular program, because he represented the voices of many industrial leaders in the area. One of whom is here today, Celso Gonzales from Celso Gonzales Construction. And that's why I invited them both to be on this panel, because this is a perfect example of how we're able to get an industry partner involved in the development of a program. And of course, I have my slides that will talk a little bit more detail, but I wanted to present and start this presentation with Joey talking about their involvement as an organization, because that's a very ideal and very efficient way to get a program that's demand-driven, that's rigorous, and that it meets the actual needs of industry, and that it's aligned with industrial needs. So what we did, and as Joey was mentioning, they essentially gave us the specs of this program. They say our members are saying we can attend class twice a week, 6 hours each session. I'm sorry, let's say 3 hours each session. We want this to be approximately a year long. We want to have this type of curriculum, these types of learning outcomes. So we at the college responded by getting a group of academic professionals in the field of construction supervision. We relied on our research. We relied on our other resources to put this program together exactly the way that Joey Trevino, his organization, and his members in the construction industry wanted this program to be. And that's, again, a very efficient, ideal way to customize a training program based on actual needs. So, Joey, if there's anything else that I missed, I believe in a nutshell, that's kind of what you were talking about. Is that correct? Okay, so he might have already stepped aside, but so I want to thank Joey Trevino, again, Executive Director for the Rio Grande Valley Chapter of Associated General Contractors, for providing that feedback and information. What I want to do now is go back and continue with my presentation before I turn it over to the other panelists that we have at this time. So going back to the start of our apprenticeship training program, the three major components I would like the audience to be cognizant of as we move along is that each of these has to be a well-structured component of any registered apprenticeship program. And I'm sure you already know that by now, but we take there's a lot of emphasis on each of these, because without any one of these three components, you do not have a registered apprenticeship program. So first and foremost, there has to be employment. There has to be, whether it's a youth or an adult apprenticeship program, there has to be work involved. So that's primary. Secondly, we have to have the related instruction, the classroom part. So we at South Texas College assumed the role as the related instruction training provider. And at the same time, we want to make sure that students receive credentials. So that's third. and in the 3 tiers that I talk about in any quality registered apprenticeship program. There has to be relevant employment, quality instruction, and actual credentials that the students receive. And since this is a registered apprenticeship program, meaning it's registered through the U.S. Department of Labor, they will receive a U.S. DOL journeyman designation upon completion. In addition, we also provide a lot of South Texas College credentials as they move along their related instruction. And that's another one of the benefits, is that we're tailoring these courses to align with other programs that we have at the college, including dual credit, which we have Mr. Cesar Garcia here from Vanguard Academy, who will talk more about that. So what I'm trying to do with the apprenticeship program is complement our existing programs, not duplicate, not replicate, and definitely not supplant anything. So if we already have, for example, a dual credit program in air conditioning, I'm taking that dual credit program, turning that into an apprenticeship program so the students continue getting their dual credit education in high school, yet at the same time get training with us in workforce and get their DOL journeyman credentials as well along the way. So again, these are our programs. I know when I brought Joey in, he talked about the construction superintendent. The only reason I have it under development right now, classes have begun, but the DOL registration part is still under development. So I'm waiting to call it a current program at that point. But other current programs, our very first one that we started with was the HVAC, air conditioning, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. And that has been, obviously, in this part of the state, a very important industry, critically needed. And that's why we had to have a very strong pipeline of students going into that program. So we felt the apprenticeship was an ideal way to have students in high school even start working in doing this type of work, even if it's part-time. And at that point, move on. Another interesting one was a professional brewer program. We have, you see the logo for 5x5 Brewing. They're out of Mission, the city of Mission, and we have 2 or 3 other breweries that are participating in our professional brew maker program, and that is a registered apprenticeship. It's a 1-year program, has a lot of interest, have a lot of individuals outside of the brewery industry actually interested in taking this. Now, the only reason they cannot is because in order for it to be an apprentice, they have to be working. But we are developing other customized training programs to meet that need anyway. So as you can see the list there, another one was Hotel Associate, was one of our first ones, and then some of the other employers that are there. Now, what I want to mention also is that in 2018, South Texas College became what is called a U.S. Department of Labor apprenticeship sponsor. That means that we, as the apprenticeship sponsor, are able to add occupations to our registered apprenticeship program. So we serve as a sponsor as long as we submit occupations to the Department of Labor for approval, and of course that includes curriculum, on-the-job learning. That allows us to maintain independently our own ownership of our apprenticeship programs. So serving as the apprenticeship sponsor, we're able to do youth apprenticeship and adult. Now, one thing I want to make very clear here is that this is one and the same. Whether it's a youth or an adult program, it's still an RAP, registered apprenticeship program. The only difference is that the youth, while they're still in high school, are taking the same classes that they would if they were an adult, but they're taking them while they're still in high school. The work experience, they're getting that experience on a part-time basis. And any typical apprenticeship program that's a year long requires full-time employment. So the question may be, well, how are they getting the 2,000 hours of full-time work while they're still in high school? Well, they are not getting the entire 2,000 hours because they're not working full-time. But at the same time, any hours that they're working and logging in as juniors and seniors in high school, that will roll over when they graduate and hopefully continue in the same job. They'll receive credit towards their DOL apprenticeship program in which they're already registered. So it just rolls over. It's just giving them a jump start, a head start, if you will, in high school. They're working, they're taking our related instructions, and they're already that far ahead once they graduate. So the youth component, and that's why, again, I break up our apprenticeship program into the youth and the adult. Right now, a little bit more information on our youth program. Some of the particulars includes part-time employment, as I mentioned. When they finish their 2-year high school program, of course, they will have received their high school diploma. They will have received credentials and continuing education units from South Texas College. And if then they're in a program that is already an existing dual credit program, they will also get credit towards their associate or a 1-year certificate at South Texas College. I'm talking academic. So it's credits all the way around. They're getting high school credit, they're getting college academic credit, they're getting college continuing education credit and industry recognized certifications. And on top of all that, they're getting credit towards a USDOL journeyman certification. So it's the best of all worlds right there when you look at students who are engaged in the youth apprenticeship so far. Again, this is more of the outcomes for students once they receive the 2 years of instruction in our apprenticeship program. They'll get the coursework, associate degree, credentials, and my point, and I always stress, is if this apprenticeship program, I want this to give them additional options, not to have them choose between continuing their education in workforce, getting an associate's, or getting a journeyman certification. I want this to be all in one package. So, and that's the way it's working out. Now, I'll get into later how we got there, but it does take work. Eligibility may be a question also. What do we look for in the youth apprenticeship program? Again, at least 16 years of age. That way they can work part-time, be willing and able to commit. I mean, this is not a summer internship. This is not a semester program, customized training program. This is something that's registered through the Department of Labor, so they have to commit through the full 2 years as juniors and seniors. We work with the schools a lot, and that's why we have Vanguard Academy here with us today, because they're a very strong partner referring students to us in their phlebotomy apprenticeship program. And that's why, again, it's really important to have good partnerships at school districts. They must be able to travel to work. Things are a little different now, but we're starting to get things rolling again where students are going to have to actually provide their own transportation to and from work. And of course, they need to be able to work in order to be an apprentice. This is I mentioned air conditioning being one of our first apprenticeship programs that we started, and we started it as a youth program. We had a high school junior actually work at Atlas Electric, who Sarah Hammond provided this quotation saying that she sees this as an opportunity to find a pipeline of workers that she can mold and build while they're still young and keep them. They're having a lot of attrition problems, especially right now, a lot of these businesses. So one thing I want to go over real quick is kind of 10 steps of how we got where we are. And, you know, we're not perfect. We're not the only apprenticeship program that exists, but we are an apprenticeship program that has seen success. We've gone through some bumps and bruises, but our own persistence is what has gotten us to this point. So, and I refer to these as a 10-step process to starting, and I should have mentioned starting and maintaining a successful registered program. But that's the key too. It's easy to start, but it's very difficult to maintain it. But with the right people, right staff, it's very possible. So the first thing is South Texas College became a USDOL registered apprenticeship sponsor. And as I mentioned before, that allows us to not necessarily have to partner with an organization or an outside business in order to add apprenticeship programs or occupations. We can create our own standards of apprenticeship. We can create our own, develop our own curriculum, our own occupations. We get them here, register, and at the same time we serve as the training provider. So it serves both purposes. This program of sponsorship, of course, allows us to offer RAPs, which is, again, registered apprenticeship programs. But again, it's the same program, but with a youth component and an adult component. So that's how we're able to include high school students in this as well. So the second step there is to develop standards and add occupations as the program expands. One of our first ones was hotel associate and air conditioning. You've seen the list now, expanding to over 15 programs. And again, adding occupations, now that we're a sponsor, is essentially a 3-document process. It's submit a letter to the Department of Labor asking to add an occupation to our program. The second document is an Appendix A, which shows the curriculum, the on-the-job learning, and Appendix D, which is the employer commitment letter that says an employer, at least one employer, will be participating. So once you're a sponsor, we submit those 3 documents to the Department of Labor. That officially allows us to add occupations, such as construction superintendent, phlebotomy. Number 3 talks about visit that I did, and I always like to see what other people are doing. And at the time, this was back in the days when we were able to travel. I went to Charleston, South Carolina, visited an excellent program that I'm sure many of you already are familiar with, and that's what I was able to bring back, and that's our next phase here. And I presented what they were doing over there in Charleston. I presented it to a regional economic development organization, the Real South Texas Economic Council, and that's where it won a lot of the initial support. And I'm talking about the prospective apprenticeship program at the time that I had. So once I got the buy-in from a regional economic development organization, things started to fall in place by having members from the community, such as the McAllen Chamber of Commerce, who essentially took this and said, I want to get this done for this. I want to get McAllen School District to be the participant, and I want to get this started. So we had the McAllen Chamber of Commerce, and the next one is McAllen School District, where we actually had the superintendent fully commit to the program and said, I want my juniors and seniors in this apprenticeship program. Then STC, then it was time for the college to get to work. We looked at utilizing our existing workforce training programs, and by this time we've had over 18 years of experience providing customized training to all areas of the industry. We took that and started developing programs, apprenticeship programs that we felt were in most need. McAllen Chamber of Commerce was really good in getting us a really good group of employers, business leaders, and representatives who were also interested, and that's what helped us get started, is getting those people together, getting employers interested, getting them committed. Then from there, we develop an advisory committee, which is critical. Then the question will be, how do you fund this? How do you pay for the classroom part? Of course, on the job, the employer pays for the wages or salaries, but how do you pay for the classroom part? I mean, some of these programs are at minimum 144 hours, contact hours per year, and some of them, like the Brewer program, is close to 300 hours. So that's a lot of classroom, that's a lot of instruction, that's a lot of tuition. Fortunately, we had, again, I'm talking about partnerships being a underpinning theme of my presentation. We have a good, strong partnership with the local workforce board, who steered us in the direction of Texas Workforce Commission funding, and Workforce Commission funding, specifically Apprenticeship Texas expansion grants. So we're in our 3rd round of the TWC Apprenticeship Texas grant, or the 3rd grant. They're not necessarily in rounds, but we have received 3 grants, and we're applying for the next one, which is within the IT sector, and that's how the tuition is offset, by grants, by the city of McAllen coming in and also providing grant funding. Workforce Solutions, in addition to the Apprenticeship Texas grant, provided us additional funding that allowed us to purchase laptops, allowed us to turn our programs, our classroom instruction, to an online delivery format. And that's how we were able to not only start it, but sustain it. And the last step here I have is just get started, is the bottom line. And that's what I do with most of our programs. I don't care if we started with 1 student, 1 apprentice, just get started. And that's what we did. I think we started at the time probably with 4 or 5 apprentices, and they're all high school students. But that's all it took. The point is that we started. And again, whether it was 1 person or 100, I wanted to get started, and we did. And that's the message I want to make sure I send is even if you have to take small steps, do it because in the long term, a program as complex as an apprenticeship program does require a very keen understanding of all the moving parts and all the participating partners in that, because it is a multifaceted program. You have employment, you have classroom, and then you have the credentials. So you have to stay on top of the compliance side of providing these credentials. And then when you deal with high schools, and I'll probably get to that next one, you have to really work and make sure that the alignment is there. High schools have their curriculum, they have their requirements, they have their state requirements. I cannot go in there, or we at the college cannot just go in there and say, okay, you need to switch gears and turn your curriculum into an apprenticeship curriculum and start changing your learning outcomes, etc. So, and I'll get into that right now, but let me focus on a couple of best practices that got us to the point where we can have a sustainable program and be eligible for funding. And that's, the first one is employer engagement and strong relationships. You have to have employers such as Mr. Gonzales here, president of Gonzales Construction. They're the ones who tell us what they need. They're the ones that tell us how to steer this program, in which direction, how to utilize our resources. We're good at developing programs, and we can develop programs every day, but if it's not really aligned with what industry really needs, we're really wasting everybody's time and resources, wasting grant money, wasting our own money, wasting our own revenue, taxpayers, etc. So that's why it's critical. And if you're dealing with employers who have to participate in a training program such as the apprenticeship, then I would definitely say that, number one, you have to have employers be your right hand when it comes to developing apprenticeship programs. And the relationships have to be strong. There has to be trust. There has to be communication. Otherwise, the program dies. Just like we've all seen programs come and go that just don't survive for lack of many things, but typically it's the relationships. So, and then also, you know, that type of relationship ensures quality. I'm not going to offer a program that is not rigorous. I'm not going to offer a program to industry that is mediocre. I always want our programs to have the highest level of quality, highest level of instructors, the best trained instructors, and the best material that we can afford to buy. And that's what these relationships, because that feedback is there. And again, dealing with apprenticeship programs, if you have a strong an employer that is committed to this program, it's easier to have them stay in the program, because again, one of the three components of an apprenticeship is employment, and that mitigates attrition. And that's why I included that as one of the factors that really makes apprenticeship program survive, is completion. The students have to complete, otherwise they don't become journeymen at all, ever, unless they complete it one day. An advisory committee is not only required of these grants that we receive from the Workforce Commission, it is an absolute necessity when it comes to implementing apprenticeship programs. The committee is made up of the different partners, participating employers, organizations such as Vocation and Rehab, Texas Workforce Commission, local chambers, economic development entities, etc. So it's critical that you have an advisory committee overseeing the occupational add-ons that we're adding to our apprenticeship programs, overseeing the progress of all these programs. And again, not one entity can do this alone. The next one is dedicated staff, and I mean apprenticeship office staff. We don't have an apprenticeship office at South Texas College, but we are still offering over 10 programs, and we're doing that with existing staff. A lot of the grants that we're receiving are for tuition and fees and related instruction, but it's not necessarily a lot of staff funding in there. But you have to have dedicated staff for the apprenticeship program. I mentioned before, there's a lot of moving parts, multifaceted program. You have to keep control of it, or it'll get away from you very quickly. The program has to be flexible too, in order for you to have a successful registered apprenticeship program. And I include in there delivery, especially now with the pandemic. A year ago, we had to switch a lot of our classroom instruction and turn it into virtual online instruction. So we modified our delivery system in the middle of a pandemic and in the middle of a semester. But that's what I mean by flexibility. You have to be able to adapt and move quickly as needs change. And in this case, we could have let the program just kind of wither away because of the lack of presence in our labs, or we could modify, and we modified. A lot of our online delivery now includes simulations where they're able to see a lot of what they would see physically in our labs in a computer. And they're able to manipulate robotic arms and manipulate other related features on their computer through our simulation software that we acquired at the time, that they would be getting in the classroom or lab anyway. Of course, it's never the same, but it's as close as you can get to a lab instruction as possible by having this type of flexible delivery system. Some of the challenges, I can't say that this or any program comes without challenges, and the first one being employer skepticism. And not so much now. I will say that we have more employers knocking on our doors than the vice versa when we were knocking on employers' doors at the beginning of this program. But the skepticism stemmed from not knowing what they were getting into. I mean, I present the registered apprenticeship program in air conditioning. First question they say, I'm not going to have a high school kid in my driving around and doing house calls. I'm not going to have a high school student be in a construction zone or in an auto shop. So those are just things that we have to work through. The liability issues, that sort of thing. And the first thing I mentioned when this came up was if Charleston, South Carolina is doing so well and has so many high school students working out in automotive facilities, construction sites, you name it, restaurants, if they can do it, we can do it. And so we did it. You just got to work through those challenges. The related instruction and alignment with high school, Mr. Garcia will talk a little bit about that. We have to make sure that we are aligned, our curriculum that we're offering our apprentices is as in so far as possible aligned with the high school curriculum. We can't expect them, as I mentioned earlier, them being the high schools, to modify what they're offering their students just to make it compatible with apprenticeship. So we work the other way around. We try to make our related instruction apprenticeship component as applicable and aligned with their high school curriculum. And that's hard, and it's not easy, but and you have to have, again, some flexibility from the high schools as well. Funding for staff, that's always a challenge. More programs means more work, means more staff and more money for staff. So we're limited, but we're still doing it. And then this is just true all the way around, limited program awareness. So the more we can get the word out, the more the first bullet here, skepticism, will be mitigated, because awareness means being educated and being aware of what the program actually is versus your own perceptions of what an apprenticeship program is. So doing that takes work, takes boots on the ground, but we are getting there. So now I wanted to turn this over to our, I now want to call them our co-presenters, because they're going to talk about themselves, introduce their business, their employment, their role in the registered apprenticeship program concept, and why they're doing this. I know we heard from Joey Trevino a while ago from the General Contractors Association, but I want to now turn it over to Mr. Celso Gonzales from Celso Gonzales Construction. He serves as the president, been there for many years, a very strong company, and he's a good friend of mine, and I really appreciate everything that Celso has done for this program, because without his help, direction, and feedback, and pushing, this program would probably not be where it is today. And today means that the first cohort is at capacity, and we already have another cohort probably starting pretty soon. So let me introduce Mr. Celso Gonzales, president of Gonzales Construction. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Carlos, or Dr. Margo, I should say. Yes,
I'll keep this brief here, and as Joey mentioned, our executive director for AGC, I first approached him, and he had the same concerns when we first came on board, and we just wanted to bring a little bit more education to the construction industry, and I'm talking more about the public sector industry, where we deal with engineers, architects, professional representatives of the owners, which is basically the owners here is the school districts, the cities, government entities, county, state, federal agencies. So when we deal with these entities, it's very complex. Our superintendents have to know how to read plans, how to communicate with the professionals. So we saw the need for a program, and we actually were looking in-house to develop something ourselves. It's at this point where Joey Trevino mentioned, why don't we talk to STC and maybe we can help them, or maybe they can help us put a program together. Come into play, Carlos here, and he said, we have an apprenticeship program. I was a little skeptical at the beginning because I think that's too much. I don't think that's what we need. We just need to train our superintendents to read plans, to communicate, follow the construction documents, read the specifications. And STC had something like this already in the works, but I did have, my employees, my superintendents and project managers have a little bit of education, a little bit of training, but we need something beyond that. When I saw the proposal from STC to put this program together, I was a little skeptical again, but once we worked through it, and it took us almost a year to work through it, it has been very well received in the construction industry. We do have currently 30 construction superintendents, and I mislead by saying that they're not all construction superintendents. We have office managers, we have salespeople in the industry, and so we have people, as Joey mentioned earlier, with 10, 15 years of experience, some even over 30 years of experience in the industry. But what was really surprising to find out was that only 3 out of the 30 participants right now have had any formal training in the construction industry. So, just that statistic alone has showed us that the need is there. It is a field that, yes, it is construction, but being targeted towards public sector. So this program has benefited, and we've already, I think, going to our second month of the program, and it's been received very well from our students, our participants. The instructors are being very helpful. So we are very pleased with what we've done so far.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzales. And yes, and again, it's a matter of making sure that we maintain the satisfaction level of individuals such as Mr. Gonzales, because of course, without them, we would not exist. But if I could, there's a couple of questions before I introduce our next speaker. There's a couple of questions that I have received here. The first one is, what are some of the strategies you have used to attract youth for some of these occupations, especially in construction and manufacturing? Well, the best strategy is to have friends and partners in the school district, such as the director of Career and Technology, Mr. Garcia, who's here, and make sure that they understand and they get it, and that you have their commitment, and that's the best. And of course, we know we'll do presentations, but if we can get the leaders of the schools to buy into this program, it's easy from there, because then they have all the trust with the students. So that's one of our main strategies. Would you be able to, the next question is, would you be able to share how you helped the breweries become DOL registered apprenticeship? Well, that took putting a brand new program together from scratch, but working backwards with the occupations in the brewery, the actual job tasks, developing curriculum based on those job tasks, and submitting that to the Department of Labor. And that's how we did it, working with a very kind of like a DACOM process, working on job tasks, developing curriculum based on actual job duties. The other question, does STC have funds from a departmental budget to sponsor the programs? At this point, not really. We will if we need to, but we don't really have an internal budget to pay for apprenticeship programs. So if we do not have grants, then it'll be up to the employers who are hiring these apprentices to pay for the classroom instruction. That's typical of most apprenticeship programs. The employers pay the classroom part. But for now, we're offsetting tuition because of the grants. But in a way, we're using staff here in our own budget, not paid for by these grants in a way. So indirectly, yeah, we are using SDC internal funds to help support this, I guess, in a complementary indirect way. So, okay, those are those questions. What I want to do now is let me introduce Mr. Cesar Garcia, who's the Career and Technical Ed Director for Vanguard Academy. He just sent us a first cohort of about, I believe, 25 phlebotomy students in this apprenticeship program. We just got that program approved by the Department of Labor. So let me turn it over to Mr. Garcia.
Thank you, Dr. Margo. Yes, again, thank you for inviting me on the panel. One of the most important reasons that I feel this is a very good opportunity for our students and why we chose to do the apprenticeship program was like Dr. Margo mentioned earlier. It really takes strong partnerships to be able to collaborate, and make informed decisions in the best interest of our children. And so it was through our, through STC, our higher education partner, that we were able to maximize on the grant from the Texas Workforce Commission. And we were able to connect our students from our health science, career, technical education program, which students will be able to earn an extra workforce credential with phlebotomy, not only earning college credit hours, but also earning an entry-based certification as a phlebotomy technician. And so that has been, in the past has been a challenge where students want to have, they want to pursue college credit hours, academic coursework, but also earn an entry-based certification. And in the past years, their students have been told, and we've been advised by STC as well, that students have to choose one or the other. Do they want to go obtain an associate's degree or a certificate program where they earn, academic coursework, or a certificate, right, college certificate, or do they want to go through continuing education and earn a workforce credential? And so I think the apprenticeship program has really served a great purpose in for those types of students that want to earn both and earn this extra credential, because ultimately it's closing the gaps. It's closing the gaps in the sense that students should have more options. And one of the most important things that I feel as an educator, right, is that we want our students not only at Vanguard Academy. Yes, we are a charter school, probably one of the few in the state that I feel that we really do push our career and technical education programs. But we are a charter school that's focused on fine arts, but we have been this past 3.5 years, been bringing in more and more career and technical education programs, because we understand the need and the demand, not only here in the Rio Grande Valley, but across the state. There is a huge demand. And so we want to make sure that our students are not only equipped, but they are marketable when they go out into the industry after high school. And so that is one of the main reasons why I feel it's very important for us here in the Valley, and not only in the Valley, across the state. That's the way it really should be. We want our students to earn either post-secondary credentials while in high school. They get a jump start on their future career or education, right? Whichever they choose. And so the goal is for them to improve their quality of life. That's our goal. We want them to improve their quality of life. And honestly, I just feel it's our moral obligation to seek as many opportunities and provide multiple avenues, right, for our students to connect them to either, if they're going to whether they can pursue a post-secondary degree or the workforce. But we have to provide those opportunities as educators. So the ultimate goal is that we all want, I think that's all we want. I can probably speak for everybody here. on that sense that we all want to have an educated workforce. I think that's most out of our goal, right? So just wanted to share that. Thank you, Dr. Margo.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. And there's one more question that came in that I overlooked. The question is, are youth limited to certain programs or are all programs available to the youth? And as long as the program is not defined as a hazardous, or the occupation, I should say, as long as the job is not designated hazardous, then they can join. They can join the program. There's certain things in construction that youth would not be able to participate in. So that's why we felt construction superintendent is more of a managerial level supervisory. That was better than having them get into some more of the electrical side of things. So anyway, to answer the question is, yes, they can do any program as long as it's not considered a hazardous occupation for children. And yeah, we can go ahead and keep the slide there for now. And I think let me open it up to any other questions if anybody has anything. Either you want to go live with a question or on the Q&A, because I have questions for the panelists, but I do want to give the audience a chance to ask any questions that they have at this time. Okay, so feel free to interject, but I have a question if I could let's start with Mr. Celso Gonzales. Why is it important for your employees to enroll in college or workforce training programs?
Actually, thank you for the question. The most important thing is really come down to continuing education. As I mentioned earlier, when we had a quick survey of our current participants in our program, only 3 out of the 30 participants have had any formal education outside of high school. So as the industry grows with technology, the use of computers, the use of webinars like this, the use of recording data, they need to keep pace with what's going on. The old days was just go out, get a set of blueprints, read them, and just keep them in there. Nowadays, off of a cell phone, off of a laptop, you can access plans, you can access specifications, you can access shop drawings, submittals, anything that you need out in the construction field. So these students need to keep in the loop of what's going on. It doesn't matter what age you're in, every project comes with its challenges. So the continuing education is a big part of this.
Yes, so I appreciate the answer, sir. Mr. Garcia, you sent us, as I mentioned, at this point, the first cohort of about 30 high school students in the phlebotomy program, which is a brand new apprenticeship program. The question is, how do you intend to continue providing your students access to higher education and additional apprenticeship programs?
Well, first of all, we want to sustain our partnerships, right? That's a key component is sustaining our program, our partnerships, so we can continue providing those opportunities to our students. And so it's sustaining those partnerships through our advisory committee meetings, right? I do not only host advisory committee board meetings within our school district, but I'm also participate in different advisory or local board meetings with Workforce Solutions or even with South Texas College as well. And it's networking and making sure that we sustain those partnerships so we can continue providing those opportunities to our students. Now, one of a big component, a big factor in the success to make us to be able to sustain this program successfully is making sure that we have the right students in those programs. We want to make sure that these students make mindful decisions and make informed decisions, so that way they're going to benefit. And because that, in turn, if this program is successful, it will market itself, and it will pretty much those students will be able to show or prove that the program works. Why? Because once they leave high school, they're working, they have credentials, they built a good resume. it's just a win-win for not only the school district, but the students itself. Ultimately, you want these students to be productive citizens after high school and be educated, right? You want an educated workforce. So I just feel that that's one of the biggest factors, right? Making sure that we sustain those partnerships. They're key. They really are. It's one of the key components to making sure that this program is successful, and making sure that you identify those students, because it's not, these programs are not for every student. A student that does not want to be too much hands-on, is more academically driven, then, provide them the dual credit opportunities or academic coursework. But students that want to learn a skill, they want to be able to work right after high school. These are the they need job training programs such as this, an apprenticeship program, to make sure that they're not only on the Department of Labor system, right? They'll get registered on the Department of Labor system, but it's free. This education is free for them, and they got to maximize on the opportunities. But it's up to us to make sure that we can lay it out, lay out the groundwork, make sure that we align high school courses that provide work-based learning experiences, and making sure that these students maximize on these opportunities. It's making sure that you get it out there, the outreach is there, making sure that you advise these students about these different opportunities, because if we don't do our part, right, as educators, then students will never know what opportunities we're offering and providing them. And the partnership, goes hand in hand. If Dr. Margo would not have reached out to us or to school districts, right, then school districts would not know about these programs. So that's why I keep referring back to the partnerships. It's critical. It's one of the most important factors, and I think that is one of the reasons why grants and many programs require an advisory committee meeting, because the conversations have to happen. These conversations have to happen. We need to have feedback from industry partners, straight from industry partners, letting us know what the industry standards are, the expectations of the workforce. All these things are very important so that we can come back and have our teachers or instructors, even at the college level, make sure that our students are well prepared for the workforce.
Yeah, and another question that's related to that, Mr. Garcia, is how do we find apprenticeship programs for youth? Well, to answer that question, it's in the chat. We got to go with labor market data as well. We want to go with where the jobs are, and at that point, we approach partners such as the General Contractors Association or Mr. Garcia and other school districts and say, look, these are the programs. There's these jobs in manufacturing. This is also going with the first question. These people are hiring. This is what they're getting paid. Do you have any students interested in getting paid this amount when they are 2 years out of high school, 1 year out of high school? And that's part of the strategy. You have to get the students interested in jobs that actually exist. So we are data-driven in our program development because we use our partner in workforce with the local workforce board to provide us with the labor market data that we need to drive these programs as well. So that is kind of wrapping this up, and now we're down to probably 30 to 60 seconds. I don't know if this automatically just shuts down, but if we have any other questions, I'd be glad to either get them now or at a later time if we don't have any more time. But I want to thank Melody, Valerie, and Andrew for your help in facilitating this session.
Well, thank you, Dr. Margo, very much. And I don't think the room will kick us out. You can contradict me if I'm wrong, Andrew. So the session does end at 4:30. I just want to thank you all for attending and remind you that you will be receiving a survey, and we'd greatly appreciate it if you would complete that and submit it. And are there any final questions for the panel?
I would just like to add, Valerie, Melody, that we're always available at the college. Should anybody want to contact us or come and visit us once travel picks up again, Be glad to get our partners together, including the panelists. I'll have to buy Mr. Gonzales lunch probably again, but if that's what it takes to get them on board and get them on campus, then I'll do that. But by all means, I learn from others, so I'm willing to share with others what we have learned. So.
Very good. Very good. And I know your contact information is in the PowerPoint. And as we said earlier, the recording that includes the chat, the question and answers, as well as, it'll show you the PowerPoint. That will be posted in about 7 days. So you'll be able to have access to that information and can reach out to Dr. Margo. So thank you all. Have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you. You too. You all have a good afternoon.
Thank you, panelists. Wonderful.
Thank you for attending the 2021 Texas Workforce Commission Virtual Forum. We trust the information was beneficial and will help us better serve the people of Texas. We will see you next year.